Hello and welcome then to another Rugby League Down South, our 2014 season review. All the coaches of our Rugby League Down South teams on the programme: Broncos, HEMEL, All Golds, Oxford, SKOLARS and South Wales. A Broncos coach praising the character of his young stars of the future as they enter the unknown. HEMEL talk of being the only southern club in the end of season finals this year. The All Golds win Championship 1 Club of the Year. Oxford continue to go local down in Acap, Oxfordshire. The SKOLARS coach takes responsibility for what was a tough season for them, and the South Wales Scorpions have something of a sting in their tail end of the season. Now, apologies for the delay in bringing you this podcast. It's been a rather busy few months for me. I think I mentioned in the last podcast I've moved house, been launching another TV programme, all things changing in terms of my employment situation, and now I'm sitting in what I'm now going to refer to as my now nice studio in the country. It's not quite that, but I moved down to Hampshire now, and this is where I'm living. And yes, it's been a little bit of an eventful couple of months, really. So yeah, apologies that it's taken so long. These interviews have been done over the last 2-3 weeks or so. It's just taken me a while to rebuild my computer, having moved, various other things as well. But thank you for your patience and thank you for your continued support. Do you know what? I haven't even looked at the stats for the podcast over the last few months. It's been such a busy time. I just load up the webpage now and I see, wow, brilliant. We're almost at 26,000 plays, which is phenomenal, really. So thank you for your efforts this year. I was hoping that we might get 30,000 by the end of the year, but of course, with the lack of podcasts over the last couple of months, it's been, not quite what I would have hoped for, and not what I hope to do with you in the future as well. So this isn't the final one of the season. I'm hoping that there will be more, and it's certainly not the final one that I intend to do at all. I will pick these up and we'll continue to do them throughout the closed season and next season as well. So more details of those are on the way soon. Before we go any further, I should say congratulations to Valley Cougars and the South West London Chargers as well, both winning National Conference titles. Amazing achievements for both clubs. The South West London Chargers winning back-to-back Harry Jepson Trophy wins for winning the Conference Premier national competition, and the Valley Cougars again, had an exceptional year in the Welsh Conference, or the National Conference, isn't it? As they've gone on to win the finals of that. So an amazing achievement for both clubs. And again, great to see non-Heartland clubs doing so well with Rugby League. So congratulations to Valley Cougars and the South West London Chargers. So now as we look at your thoughts and the interviews of all the teams as we progress through, I will give you these interviews pretty much in the order they were done, barring the first one. We'll start with the Broncos. The other ones, I'll just play them in a chronological order as they were recorded, because it pretty makes more sense with cross-reference between the interviews. A couple of your thoughts, though, to start with. First of all, Andy on Twitter, at Ian Ramsdale, saying, Joey Grimer's amazing positive vibe is so contagious. Him being given the leading role was my highlight for Broncos in 2014. Hashtag RLDS. And a tweet as well I thought I'd read you from Tilly Vea, who was obviously with the London Broncos for 2014. Just simply said on Twitter, I will never forget the season I played with the mighty London Broncos. It's been an incredible year for him, put himself in the eyes of the Super League, hasn't he? Performed very well for London Broncos, and I think for a player like him just to say, for the mighty London Broncos, with the season that they've had, just goes to show quite what people feel for that club when playing there over the last year, or last few years, as you could look at. And a couple of other things to mention as well in terms of debuts for players. I think I mentioned back in the podcast where we talked about the Roll of Honour, the inductees into the London Broncos Supporters Association Hall of Fame, how Steve Newcombe, who's running these supporters association, or the man behind it, I should say, he sat down and went through all the old team sheets and came up with a Roll of Honour. And Oscar Thomas, in his debut, became the 564th player to play for the club. Toby Everett, therefore, became the 565th. And at the end of the season as well, we had the 566th in Alex Walker making his debut. So yes, 566 players have now played for London's Southern side. And while I mentioned the Supporters Association as well, we're planning hopefully to record a podcast in the next month, hopefully, if we can. One of the programmes we'll do may well talk to the South West London Chargers and the Valley Cougars as well in a future podcast over the next few weeks. But yeah, a podcast hoping to be arranged in conjunction with the Supporters Association. More details will be announced through the association and hopefully through Twitter as well. My Twitter feed at Ian Ramsdale. Over the next month or so. Keep your eyes out for that. On Broncos season then, Eddie on Twitter saying, I had an honest chat with Mr. Hughes before the final game against Bradford. What a nice man. Impressed with the plans for next season. However, London needs a long-term lease somewhere for its roots to grow. And someone saying under 17s played for the Dragons. Good luck to Chargers in the final. And Eddie also saying, what a joy to see so many of Medway's young guns coming through, South East winners, Cup finalists, all in year one. Also saying that David Hughes made reference to Sunday fixtures at the Hive and looking for support from the London rugby community again. Anne says, though, she was dreading that news coming. It'll make journeys by public transport difficult, always engineering works. But Dean saying, on the other hand, brilliant. Grow the core. Junior RL excluded from the Hive by Saturday kickoffs. Just shows you the conundrum a choice of kickoff day involved. Phil says we'd love to make sure that Scholars and Stags play most of their home games when London Broncos are away, which again would be ideal if possible if they can fit that into the fixture calendar. And Matt saying he can always play games any day he wants, but needs to sort out a long-term strategy and a stadium because there's barely a club to support. Those are a few of your thoughts I had on Twitter. Let's get around to the interviews then, hear from Joey Grimer, the London Broncos head coach. I rabbited on for long enough, but this is our end of season look at how people saw 2014. As always, Joey Grimer honest and open about the year that's gone and about the future.
Joey, when you look back on the season now, then what's the overriding feeling? Because I guess disappointment if you look on the field, but you've tried to keep it positive looking ahead towards next year.
Yeah, it has been a difficult season, Ramo, as everyone, both at the club and all our support, all our fans, would know this themselves. However, given we didn't have an off-season and we recruited very, very late, we were given a licence very, very late in last year's season, always put us in a negative light starting or commencing the season for this year. And for the players that we had, certainly... the effort was always there. It was just probably the inability of the player playing collectively, the group of players in a Super League competition. I guess reflecting on the season, Ramo, you could put it down to a few things that went wrong. I felt that obviously without the pre-season and lack of continuity and getting key players into the squad, round 2, round 3 and 4 really had an impact on where we wanted to set our tones and our goals moving forward. And probably the fact, the bigger factor is that with the promotion and relegation, Ramo, when I took it from Tony Ray round 11, I was certainly planning for relegation. And obviously with the introduction of the relegation, promotion, opportunities, if you like, it was always going to be difficult to maintain and continue to hold on to those more senior, those more elite players at our club, given that we were looking or facing playing into championship competition in 2015. So they're probably the two biggest factors that probably didn't give us or didn't help us in the fact that we didn't have an off-season and certainly being relegated to championship, Ramo.
And on the flip side of that, you talk about using the experienced players for next year. You've obviously blooded quite a few more youngsters. You've got a young squad for next year, a lot of them locally bred as well. People have talked often about giving the kids experience in a side that loses games and said it could affect them negatively. You'd rather put them into a team, to learn the right way or to learn a positive endorsement of connecting of skills. Do you think that your young squad might have been damaged by this year at all, or do you think they've come through it unscathed?
Yeah, look, I think the players that we're talking about, the John Wallaces, the Joe Keys, the Joel Wickses and those kind of players, if people knew them as well as what I knew them mentally. The us having one win this year and not being in the best form won't really impact on them. In fact, those 3 players, given that we've got 7 or 8 20-year-old players, people need to remember that, again, I keep on harping on it, but we haven't had an off-season for 2 years. If the other side performed this year, I think that those 3 players, or all the younger players, are going to benefit massively from being involved in a senior program, because they know now what it takes, or the opportunities that they're going to come up against, given that same situation. So they can go away understanding what is required, and given a pre-season, it's actually put them in a really good opportunity and good stead for us playing into championship.
How much of next year is an unknown? I know you've tried to combat things by bringing in people like Andrew Henderson as your assistant, somebody who knows the championship very well, championship players as well, and people who know the game. But how much is still a bit of a leap into the unknown next year in the championship?
It's a huge unknown for me, personally. Having arrived into the UK in February, it's very difficult to grasp the actual challenges in championship. And you've also already mentioned Andrew Henderson. Andrew's playing against Fev this weekend, so his understanding of the environment, where we're going, how the grounds, the situations, is going to be paramount to the success of us logistically next year. So he is monumentally important to how we plan for that particular week or particular season, if you like. On the player front, Ramo, we've got players coming to our club that have got NRL experience. However, if you have a look exactly where they're playing at the moment, you're talking about Wes Nagama, who's playing in for Penrith in the reserve grade, and you've got our Forum, who's playing for Wentworthville Leagues, who are Parramatta's feeder club in the second grade. You've got Daniel Harrison, although he played first grade for Manly last week, he's playing second grade, first grade. So the players that I've identified are experienced NRL players, but are currently playing in a second tier competition similar to championship, and that's a very that's something that Andrew and I have physically done in order that we can understand that we're going into championship, but if we think we're going to go to all these clubs and just go there and get 2 points, we're going to get a rude shock. And it's similar in the second-tier competitions in the New South Wales Cup, and the Queensland Cup is where we've recruited the non-English-based players. Along with those guys, we've recruited Luke Adamson, we've recruited Matt Garside, and we've recruited 3 or 4 other players who are playing in championship as well now. So I think that we've got a really good cross-section of experience at the top end, as well as experience in a second-tier competition, because whilst the competition in championship may not be as fast, it's certainly going to be as physical and, with less diligence from the experience of referees. There's a lot more that goes unnoticed in championship. So we're well aware of that. So we need to make sure that we combat that with the right type of player who is experienced in playing in that environment, a hostile environment.
I'm not sure you want to speak on David Hughes' behalf, but I know a lot of the fans are looking forward to next year because of everything that's gone on this year and the plans that are already in place. How excited is David? Because for him, the last few years have been tough as well. Yeah,
look, David, let me say up front, first and foremost, David's been incredibly supportive, as is Jason, our general manager, and the backroom staff of the direction that I want to take the club. David has been great enough to give me a 2-year contract, so he sees the next 2 years as a critical stage of the London Broncos franchise. And the fact that he's given his assurance that we are going to be full-time, Ramo, and we will use the entire cap, suggests how serious and how important the next 12, 24 months is to the London Broncos franchise. And given the players that we've signed, David certainly is happy in the direction that the club is going into. But not only from a rugby perspective on the pitch, Ramo, we need to overhaul the whole structure, the academy, the scholarship, the way we recruit, the way we we promote from within the player pathway, the identification structure in identifying these younger kids, the coaching philosophies at a young age. So it's not just what's happening on the pitch, Remo, it's what we're doing structurally as a whole entire club. Because we would love, although we had 7 London-based players in the last game of the year, we would love to, add a few more to that. But that's going to take 3 or 4 seasons for that to come through. And whether I'm here or not, it's my wishes that I leave the club with a happy and progressive legacy.
And you mentioned things that are going on off the pitch. I mean, I've heard stories about potential long-term leases being looked at for, a place for you to play. I mean, you probably can't talk specifics as such, but are there things like that going on off the field, that a long-term future is being looked at? Because, those are the things really that would put a more solid base down, aren't they, on which a coach like you can build?
100%, Remo. And, what we do on the pitch is only 10% of the whole picture of the London Broncos franchise. And you're 100% right. We are looking at a number of different strategies moving forward. We don't want to be known as the nomadic Londoners. As, a lot of people over the last decade, we've had a lot of change. And subsequently, we've lost a lot of support base. And that affects commercial and bums on seats. And it affects the whole finance structure of our club. One area where David and Jason are leading from the front foot is they're trying to work out what the best plan is. We're encouraging and employing people to work out strategies moving forward where the London Broncos can have a headquarters for a longer period of time rather than a year-by-year or 2-year-by-2-year plan. So it's certainly something that's in motion at the moment, and we've got a number of different programs that we're looking at, Remo.
And then, in terms of on the field, the squad that you've assembled for 2015, I guess you're probably very happy with, the people that you've got in. It does seem that you've gone for a smaller squad, but, potentially getting you better players on a pound-for-pound basis, you could argue. And also, to have a squad in place at this point in the season is something that London Broncos haven't done for many a year.
Yes, you're right, and you're absolutely 100%. We were signing 25 players, Remo, where I would imagine a lot of the other championship clubs would have a squad of 30. And again, it just reiterates the importance that those academy players and the academy coaches are coaching to the level that they need to, and the continuity and the consistency as the first team are. Because if we need to call on one of those players, whether it's through injury or illness or suspension, we need to ensure that that player is rewarded for what they're doing in the academy, but also when they transition into the first team, that it's not foreign to them, Remo. They understand what the principles are, what the structures are, what's expected of them, both at training and on the playing pitch. So, yeah, we are going with a smaller squad, which doesn't necessarily mean we're disadvantaged. In fact, we are looking to promote from within the 19s program, given that we do require that. Hopefully we can have a situation like Lee had this year where they used a core base of 22 players. They were very, very lucky and successful with their injury management. So we could have a year like that, but if we don't, and we have to call on a few players for 6-7 games in a year, if the player is playing well, if one of the Broncos players are playing well in the 19s, why not give them a crack in championship? We've done it this year, and we've seen the likes of, as I've mentioned, Joey Keys, Joel Wicks, the Johnny Wallaces, the Alex Walkers, the Toby Everetts, and those kind of players who didn't look out of place playing first grade.
And just two final questions, Joey. You've recruited a couple of young lads from the Midlands RFL structure. I mean, this goes to show, doesn't it, that one, you're connected with the rugby league areas within the south and sort of getting those best players that are best brought into the Broncos pathway, but also the structures in the game seem to be working as well and supporting you.
Exactly, and the two guys you mentioned, Matt and Ben from the Midlands, Crooksy up there, Coach Crooks has done a tremendous job. They were originally identified by Darren Higgins, our head of youth, and they've come in, and a bit of a reward to them. they're actually training. We finish training next week, Ramo, on the 3rd of October. Those 2 players, as well as 5 other academy players, have been training the last 2 weeks and will continue to train next week with the full team squad. So already we're front-loading skill application into them, and given that now those 7 players will go back to academy on November 3, they'll know the standards required so they can instill what they've learnt these 3 weeks to take back. And just on those 2 players personally, they have been nothing short but incredibly pleasant to coach. They just absorb everything. They are so raw, yet want to learn so much, and they're just so appreciative. The fact of being given an opportunity to train in an elite environment over a 3-week period, and we're going to continue to maintain that relationship, and we're going to branch out what we actually want to do as far as identification in recruitment and retention. We're disappointed that we do lose a lot of players to the north, and we need to stop that or introduce strategies that combat that. Now, we're in a really lucky situation, although Greater London's got 11 million people here, and the surrounding areas, we would be crazy not to introduce structures and partnerships with different regions or academies, given that there could be a couple diamonds in the rough. And if we can get 1 or 2 every year, happy days. And it just ensures that, 1, rugby league is doing what it should be, and 2, the London Broncos are building relationships and could get players that play first grade from an area which may not have been explored before.
Joey, I don't know how you do it, but your positivity comes across down the phone line as well as in person. But when the situation of the Broncos are in at the moment, people have looked at and explored, whether it's the end of rugby league in London or quite how healthy it is. And this has been brought on, with the relegation. But it does seem that the more people dig, the more people find out that actually the game's in a pretty healthy state.
It's incredibly healthy state. And I can tell you that categorically. I've been to the last. We have a trial-based system where we call it the Origin Series. We have a number of teams from the north of the river and a number of the teams from the south of the river, and they play over 3 consecutive weekends. This is the 3rd weekend tomorrow, and it will be down south in Medway. We've got age groups from 13s, 14s, 15s, 16s, 17 and 18s. So we're watching 5 games, and out of that side we will pick our scholarship and academy, and we will have an opportunity for an open trial for the players that, for whatever reason, weren't able to trial because of other sporting commitments or injuries or illness later on down the season. So London, given that we're watching 70 to 80 to 100 kids every weekend, just ensures that we have got some athletes in London, and it's very important we identify those athletes because some of them from different sports, granted, so we need to front load the skill application into them at a very young level. And with the population we've got here, if we can get the structures and the procedures right, in 2 or 3 years' time, Ramo, we could really see some gifted players, whether it be from rugby league programs or other sporting programs, really jump onto and grow this sport of rugby league in the south.
Always get an honest answer from Joey Grimer. Good to chat with him, and I think he's looking forward to 2015. It is a bit of the unknown, as we touched on. I'm not quite sure that they exactly know what to expect. I'm not quite sure any of us do, really, with the new structure, the new setup and how it's going to go. It is going to be an interesting year, and Broncos, you'd hope, and the way they set up and the squad that they've recruited, will be looking to put some 3 points on the scoreboard this year. Or would it be 2 points, or would it be bonus points? Have they decided yet on what it's going to be? Put it this way, put some W's, or put some numbers in the W column of the table. That's probably the easiest way of saying it, isn't it? And just I'm sure we'll catch up and we'll hear more from Joey Grimer and the boys ahead of 2015. Now, to the interviews of the Championship 1 teams, and like I said, these are all going to be in pretty much chronological order as it makes most sense. The first one I did was HEMEL Stags, knocked out of the Championship 1 playoffs with a golden point defeat at Gateshead, 15 points to 14. Coach Troy Perkins called it tough to take. they're pretty much saying, it's like a drop of a toss of a coin, isn't it, in terms of who wins. 10 minutes each way would be fairer without the golden point, said Troy to myself on Twitter. So I thought, well, I might as well hear from him and we can debate it in person. Like I said, the only Southern team to make the end-of-season playoffs in 2014. Here's my chat with the HEMEL Stags coach, Troy Perkins.
Troy, well, we're talking the morning after the night before when you've been knocked out of the Championship 1 playoffs. What's the overriding feeling? You must be disappointed not being in the competition anymore, but I guess the manner of the comeback in the game and the fact that you got to the playoffs in the first place must be quite positive.
Yeah, I think most things are positive. We made the playoffs, which is what we always set out to do. We went up to Gateshead under difficult circumstances. We had, I think, 6 guys unavailable through injury or commitments early Monday morning. And then we lost Eddie Mabaraga after 10 minutes last night and Kieran Clement Pascal just after half time. So we were down to the bare bones for that second half, but we showed plenty of courage in our defence and probably it didn't, the way we played, at times we put ourselves under pressure and they had all the ball and it was only how we fronted up in defence and our courage and tenaciousness that got us the draw. And then obviously going out to a drop goal in Golden Point is very disappointing. The manner you go out because you don't get an opportunity to hit back after conceding a point. But most things are positive. Very proud of the effort. And to be honest, I said to the boys after the game that we probably would have struggled to get a team out next week. We had 4 guys that after the game would have been no good for next week. Matt Cook, who's played centre for us all year, he can't play against Hunslet because he's on loan from Hunslet, and all the other guys on the sideline. So it literally would have been bare bones. So I'm proud of the effort and disappointed way to go out, but I'm glad we got that far.
How do you feel about the golden point? There was a fair bit of discussion on Twitter following the result. It's not an easy way. It's not a nice way, is it, of going out?
No, it's not. And once it goes to golden point, it's a toss of the coin. It's anyone's game. It depends on who gets the field position and who gets set for a drop goal,
or who makes a mistake first.
Who makes a mistake? We had a drop goal attempt from just after over halfway. It just missed. Then they got down the other end, kicked. We unfortunately knocked the ball on, and then they got set for a top goal and put it over. So, not a nice way to go out. But as I said, it's I can't fault the guys' effort and the courage they showed under difficult circumstances yesterday.
You've signed Rob Thomas from London Scholars for 2015. You finished the top ranked place for a Southern club in Championship 1. It's going to be a bigger, a more competitive division next year. But are you the leading light in the South at the moment? Are you the best team?
I don't know. I think yeah. On paper, I'm not sure about that. The other clubs have got some quality players in their ranks, but it's shown that we work hard for each other. We're a good group of mates on and off the field, and that goes a long way when you take the field. And again, that was proven last night against adversity. So, there's more established teams like your Scholars and people like that. But I'd like to think that after this season that we are sort of attracting the right headlines and people. There are players that want to come to us and. Because of our success, I had a conversation the other day with someone, and do sort of high-profile players in this league like Rob Thomas, does he sign with us if we run last this year? Probably not. So being able to compete and show people that we're a competitive team and haven't been the most successful Southern team this year, I think is great for recruitment. And obviously it's putting our name out there as a pretty decent, club.
And now with, 2 runs in the playoff in 2 seasons since you joined the semi-professional ranks just 2 years ago, it'll be tough to make it again next year, but is that your aim?
I think it's always our aim to make the playoffs, because that's a reward for at the end of the season to go that bit further. But as you said, it's going to be very difficult. There's 5 teams coming down that'll all be expecting to make the playoffs, plus a couple of teams that finished above us this season, like your Gateshead, who are going to spend up big, now owned by Newcastle Falcons, and the other 2 teams out of the 3 that don't get promoted, Hunslet, Oldham and York, one of them will go up, but obviously the other 2 will be still in the competition. So, I mean, it's going to be a massive test for us. But what makes it probably a little bit easier is that the southern teams play each other home and away, and most of the northern teams you only play home or away. So that means we've got probably an easier draw than like a Gateshead or someone like that that's going to have to play those northern teams twice. But yeah, I mean, it is going to be hard, and that's why I really was looking forward to the playoff this season, because we may not see them again for a while, although that will obviously be our aim.
They've done well over the last 2 years, really, to embed themselves in Championship 1. I think what we said at the end of last season, they'd still like to have a few more people coming through the gates and get a bit more attention, but getting themselves into the end of season playoffs, positioning themselves potentially as the top Championship 1 team in the South going forward. It's a good position to be in for increasing your crowd. So hopefully we can see HEMEL progressing further in 2015 as well. Now to the Championship 1 Club of the Year, as voted for and as awarded at the Championship Awards just this week. Of course, the interview was done before they got the award, so there's no mention of that in there, but you can hear all the work and the reasons why they got such award. And of course they're still searching for a coach, aren't they, for 2015, with the moving on of Brad Heppy in the year, Steve McCormack taking over. I saw a tweet from Lionel Hurst, the president of the All Golds, who was asking for a few email addresses just in case there might be an announcement that the coach was for had links with or from with West Yorkshire. So again, I don't know anymore. But there we go. There might be a West Yorkshire link to a club, to a place where they live or have lived or worked. I said to Lionel, "Is that a clue?" He said, "Oh, clever. Great list applied from far and wide. Very soon now for the news." So that may come any time, but the coach, of course, for the latter half of last season was Steve McCormack. He's who I had a chat with, of course, before they were awarded Championship 1 Club of the Year. But many things for us to chat about for a positive year for the All Golds. Here is Steve McCormack.
Steve, when you look back at your time at the All Golds, coming in mid-season, never tough, but you seem to have done a great job with a great bunch.
Oh, I loved every minute. The job when I took over, I think it probably, a club that had a couple of decent results and, just needed maybe a little bit more direction. I think Brad Heppy did a fantastic job. But I loved every second of my time at Gloucester, and we had some fantastic results and hopefully put a few structures in place that the club can move forward with.
It was said a few weeks ago that you weren't going to be carrying on in the role, and you've been lucky enough to have been appointed as part of the structure at the Wigan Warriors at your hometown club. So congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
But you, never one to shy away from it. It wasn't this stopgap. You really got yourself involved with what was happening at the club, bought into the whole All Golds thing, and looked from top to bottom at what they were doing. What sort of state do you leave them in?
Well, hopefully a good state. I think it was in a good state already, to be honest. I think, the facilities down at the All Golds are first class. I've been fortunate enough to coach at all levels of the game, and you look at the facilities at the University of Gloucestershire, and they are fantastic. And I also had a good look at the under-16s and the under-19s, and obviously the book season starting, and we've looked at a pathway, to hopefully get these players playing in the years above and hopefully playing first grade for the All Golds. And we've looked at the coaching pathway, and I'd like to think that that going forward the club's in a position where some of these players, and some fantastic players who were down in the southwest, they can eventually play for the first team at the All Golds.
And what do you think about the way that obviously the All Golds are going for next year and beyond? It's going to be tough, isn't it, in Championship 1?
It's really tough. I mean, it was tough this year as well. But if you look at the sides that are coming down next year, you've got sides like North Wales, Swinton, Rochdale, and then you've got some outstanding sides as well. There's going to be one side going up there, and it's the southern-based clubs. Oxford finished the season really well. London Scholars on the day are outstanding. HEMEL's had a fantastic season. But I think they're in a good state at the moment. I know they're certainly in good hands with Rob Webber and Lionel Hurst and Andy Pitchford, who's obviously pulling the strings at Gloucestershire. And a lot was said about the results we had while I was down there at Gloucestershire. But people like Dan Garbett and Pat Evans and all the backroom staff are good people still at the club, and I'm quite excited about what's going to happen there in the next couple of years.
How disappointed were you not to make the playoffs?
Very disappointed, yeah. I think the fact that the depth of our squad just caught up with us. I think when we had our full side out, and that's no excuse really. Everybody copes with injuries, but I think we had our fair share. There was a time when a couple of players had played in the first grade that I'd never even met, apart from turning up at 1:30 on the Sunday at the back end of the year. We had 11 or 12 injuries, which were key players for us. So I think the fact that we beat York and beat Hunslet, and we beat London, we beat South Wales, we beat Oxford, and ran Oldham very, very close. I think just to miss out on that final playoff place at the last week of the season was very disappointing.
And this could be a dead-end question, but the feeling whenever I go along to the Broncos and their training ground, and you're in and you're around the squad and the club, is a great feeling of togetherness and kind of like an us and them scenario, the opposite of, I guess, the way that sometimes people in the north see it, being us and them with them down south, but a real great sort of vibe and togetherness within the squad. I mean, what is the overall feeling? I've never been along to the Old Golds. I don't know what that feeling is. What is the feeling of the club when you're around there and you're experiencing it?
Well, it's outstanding. I mean, to be honest, the first thing we looked at over the first 2 or 3 weeks during my time at the Old Golds was just reinforcing the values of what makes a good side, that honesty and that respect. And, I remember speaking to you the very first week of me taking the job was to make sure that people started respecting the All Goals. And, I was maybe guilty of that myself and not giving the respect to some of the southern-based sides and thinking they're quite new to the game and, we can pick three easy points up. And obviously I never thought that, coaching up here, but that's a mentality what maybe some other teams had of the All Goals and some of the southern teams. But this year that's changed. You look at some of the performances and the results that the All Goals have had, and you look at some of the results that a lot of the southern-based clubs have had, and they're there to stay. They'll certainly improve, and I think they'll rattle a few teams in the Championship 1 next year.
And just tell us a bit about your new role and how happy you are to be working at, as I said, your hometown club.
Oh yeah, it's a massive privilege for me. I'm a Wigan lad, and I've been fortunate enough to be coaching. I think it's nearly 20 seasons now. I'm still quite young, but seem like I've been around for a long time. But I just think to get the opportunity to work with the young players at Wigan and the coaches, and there's going to be a little bit of education in there as well, and a little bit of mentoring, and it's just fantastic to be part of a great club like Wigan. So very privileged, and it's certainly not something I've took for granted. It's a massive honour for me.
He's a good man. Is Steve McCormack always willing to give time for the Rugby League Down South podcast? And like I said, I think you possibly might look at it and think, you went to the All Golds, it sort of filled a gap, got him into the coaching, he's done well, and he's gone on to get an opportunity at Wigan, and maybe he I don't know, in some way sort of use the All Golds as just a temporary base to go on and do something else. But no, he really did get involved with what that club was doing and where they're going. And like you mentioned there, it's another person that's been touched by Rugby League Down South, has changed their mindset and has gone away and will be rich for it. So I think that he was very well committed, and it's not easy, particularly in the personal situation he's got. Doing the teaching and trying to do the rugby league on the side as well. It's a lifestyle that I know very well, doing the rugby league on the side. But no, he did a great job at the Old Golds. Had a terrific end to the season, didn't they? And we wish them all the best for 2015 and their search for a new coach. And you thought maybe you wouldn't have. You might get some news about that soon. I know nothing at the moment. I haven't had too much time to chase anything or talk to people down at the Old Golds. But you'd have thought with close season going on that there might be, or they'd hope that they can announce something reasonably soon. But so fingers crossed for that.
Now then on to Oxford. 24 points this year. A great points total, really. 7 wins, 1 draw and a bonus as well. A great season, really, for Tony Benson's men. They had a number of things, not necessarily to deal with, but other things happen in the year with Carl Tomato going to play with them midway through the year, and it's an interesting setup, an interesting procedure that they're trying to do. We've mentioned it before, the different ways that all the newest Championship 1 clubs are going about things in terms of trying to grow their club and improve their side on the field. So what is the thoughts currently after 2 seasons now in Championship 1 for head coach Tony Benson? Reflecting on 2014, Tony, overall, how was it for Oxford?
Well, I think a fantastic year for us. One of our mandates is to develop local players, and we stuck to that mid-season when we had what I'd call injury crisis, unusual number of injuries. We stuck to that. We didn't bring in any loan players or dual reg, and went to our Cavaliers team really and brought players up. So from that, we didn't pick up points in the middle of the season where some of our other teams around us were that had taken in loan players. But at the end of the season, we won 2 games and drew the last one with HEMEL. And that was with those players. So for me, that was a fantastic season.
You've always said, developing the local talent and embedding the club within Oxfordshire is the plan. Every time we talk, you sort of say, the plans are going well and things are moving forward and the links with the universities are getting ever stronger and stuff. Has that continued throughout 2014?
Certainly has. Like last season, our first season, I purposely had it ranged between 8 and 11 players from up north in certain positions playing for us, and leveraging their experience onto the new local players. I cut that back to 5 this year. We ended up, through long-term injury, with just 2 to 3. So in our last game, we had 2 players from up north playing for us in our last few games. And we were extremely competitive. We won 2 of those games and drew the last one against, playoff team. So, I think we've really come on. Really happy.
What happens now then in terms of the closed season? Is this a busy time? I guess it's a different time to when you're in season.
There's no quiet time. Right now it's about planning for next year. Looking at what worked, what didn't work, making the changes necessary, budgeting. We've had two board meetings so far, just looking at budgets and against expectations, and we've fine-tuned those. It's more expensive to be in the competition next year, so we've got to take that into account. And for me, it's a case of looking at my squad and then signing the players we want to have and finding the players we need to bring in. You've got your sitting, finding your kit, your training venues, sorting out a training plan. It's a massive time, really, because what you do now, you'll get the results sort of middle of next year.
What's your sort of general turnover of players at Championship 1 level? Because I guess it's not like Super League in that you're dishing out sort of 2-3 year contracts. Usually most players are there for a year and you're looking to, not necessarily refresh, but arrange these things on a year-by-year basis.
Well, we do take plenty of time in getting the right player, and we're putting a lot of time into each player that comes to the club, and developing them. So, you don't want to do that, make a mistake in the player, and misread the potential of a player and put a lot of time and effort and money into him, only to find he can't make it. So we try and limit that, which means our turnover, if we get it right, should be pretty low, year on year. So we haven't changed that much. I was always going to cut back heavily on the northern players after year 1, after they'd done their job for us, and we've done that. We can't really cut it back anymore because the positions that we need players from up north are in halves where you need experience. So apart from that, we pretty well want to retain the squad. If we can add some players to it, from a trial a bit later in the year, this year, we'll do that. But apart from that, we'll just keep developing the ones we've got. More than happy with our squad.
Your trials have been reasonably successful, haven't they, over the last few years? You've picked out a good few players. Yeah,
we're doing it differently. I mean, the first trial we got 80 players, and we picked the team that got us to the playoffs. Last year we had smaller trial and just one trial, smaller one, and this year we're going to going to do it smaller again, but what we're trying to do is play opposition of a higher standard, so we can really judge the potential of a player. So in doing that, we'll bring a team in especially to play the trialists against. So we're just fine tuning that really now. And we're not in the need for finding 40 players. We're in the need for finding 5 or 6 gems really.
And just scrolling down the newsfeed on oxfordrl.com, your website, there's stories about new local talent getting their debuts and your match reports, but also about the rugby league new era, as they've called it, and the changes that have been brought in, and sort of the new structure and the new leagues for 2015. How is it going to be in Championship 1? Because it does strike me that with 5 teams coming down, it's going to be a tougher year next year.
Yeah, the standard will definitely be higher. It was higher this year with a couple of teams coming down, but next year with 5 more coming down, from a very strong championship, and it wasn't decided as to who those teams were until the very last few weeks. So for a lot of them, so they're going to be, very difficult. That's one side of it on the playing side. But I think we're coming up to meet them. At the stage, if they were coming down last year, I would have been quite concerned. This year, we'll add a couple of players in and from the south and just to bolster the quality a little bit, but I think we'll be competitive. But the area that it is tough and challenging is the financial side, because I'm pretty sure with all the development teams from the south still building our crowds, we don't make money on a game, we still lose. It's difficult to find sponsors, and the costs have increased, the number of games have increased. So on a home game, we'd lose on I'd say every southern team, including London Broncos, would lose on a home game. So by increasing the number of games, we lose more money. We've got to find that somewhere.
I guess as well, they tried to offset that with fewer games against the northern sides, sort of a regional breakdown for some of the extra games in the division. Do you think that'll help, or would you rather sort of play everyone week in, week out and play them twice? That would be a lot of games, though, wouldn't it?
No, I don't think it helps at all. I mean, travel time, it helps, but apart from that, as I said, we're all in the process of building our crowds, and support base. So the travelling contribution to your match day is not there with the southern teams. So you're not really gaining anything by that, apart from slightly less travel time. Financially, it's probably worse.
That's the Oxford coach, Tony Benson. Always good to chat to him. Always talk for what seems like hours when we're off air as well. He's enjoying himself. And I think ever since I remember interviewing him before the start of the Championship 1 season a couple of years ago, and he was just itching to get going and still very much enjoying what he's doing and wanting to drive Oxford forward. It's going to be tough, isn't it? Tony explains that the financial side, and you've got to presume as well that the extra finances are going to have squeezed the playing budget somewhat, and to consider you're squeezing a playing budget on a season where you've got better teams coming into the league, I think that it's going to be very tough for some of those Championship 1 teams next year. Oxford and the like will do as best they can to try and combat that, but good to hear that they're building well, keeping their own players and developing their local talent so that they can hopefully conquer Championship 1 and be competitive in what will be a very tough division next year. But now at this point, I did have a chat with the South Wales Scorpions head coach, Mike Grady. Now, for reasons which you'll hear again later in the podcast, we're not going to hear it at this point. Again, this will make sense. I didn't want to include him at the end of the podcast. It's pretty much, but that's how it's ended up, because I saved the interview, but then various systems ended up being deleted, and I had to re-record the interview. So we'll hear that again in a second. But firstly, London Scholars. 9 bonus points this season, made them finish above Oxford in the table. Okay, I mean, it was on points difference, but I guess because of the points difference, they got the bonus points. But yeah, 9 bonus points for Scholars this year. Disappointing that they didn't finish, I guess, in the playoffs. That's what they would have hoped for. They were 7th, so looking at the table, 2 places behind, 9 points behind. Those bonus points, turn those to wins. You'd be looking at a playoff then for London Scholars, but it wasn't. A tough year for them. It's not been easy, has it, really, in 2015, and having to compete with the other sides in the south. I mean, I wonder whether that had an impact on the season, something that I did ask. the head coach, Joe Mabu. Stephen on Twitter saying, any contract renewals or signings made yet? Another question that I could put to Joe Mabu when I spoke to him last week. Joe, when you reflect on the season, it seems like this year was another tough year for Scholars.
Oh, definitely. We can definitely say it was a tough year for Scholars. A lot of lessons learned for myself personally, and again, I believe that the lessons that I've taken this year is to make me a better coach and better for the future.
What particular things have you learnt this year? I mean, what was it that was so different, I guess?
I think in areas where I liked, in areas where I needed to strengthen, I thought what I had was enough, and there is such a thing. Sometimes enough is not enough. You need, I needed to be a bit more sure and certain on the people that I had in place to cover those areas that I was lacking. I think in some ways I didn't have enough in certain areas in terms of position to have that competitive competition within the squad, and that's where I kind of believe that what I've lacked this year and what I've learned that I need to make sure that I've got cover on top of cover, and just make sure that I'm not reliant on just 2-3 people to do a job, and injuries sometimes occurs, or people just don't perform, and you need to bring people in that will fulfill those roles.
Sounds like you're taking a lot of the responsibility for the year on yourself. I mean, is that the way you see it? It wasn't necessarily the way that your team performed?
I believe overall, I think people that performed and individual players only they will be able to sort of look within themselves and know if they've delivered or they've performed to the best of their ability. The only areas I can look at my own individual performance as a coach, and look at the areas where I sort of feel that I wasn't so good at, and I think sometimes you need that, and certainly every season that's always my view. Always look at the positive, and also look at the things that didn't quite go as well as as it could have. When we typically to highlight or to sort of summarize our season, we picked up 10 bonus points, and that showed. In a lot of games we played, we weren't that far away from those games in terms of winning them or getting in front. But because of a lack of personnel in certain areas, we fell short of the target, and that sometimes it's up to me who I bring in, and it's on me to look to cover those gaps, and and like I said, I should have. On reflection, made sure that I had 3 or 4 players covering certain positions to assure us those tighter, those smaller margin games for us to sort of be in a position to have won, or even been a lot closer than we were during the season.
Is it a lot more difficult to get the cover for those positions? I mean, you've seen the transition through adding in the extra teams in Championship 1. The division gets a lot tougher next year, although you've got the inclusion of one extra team, which isn't a Heartlands team. But has it been more difficult under the new structure to make sure that you have, as London Scholars, that full squad?
Do you know what? It's always difficult, and I believe. I'm a big believer in always finding a solution to a problem. That is a problem, but I wouldn't hang on it as an excuse to how we performed this year. I work on finding the solutions to any issues, to any problems, to any difficulties, and I'm sure that though the pool of players is not what it needs to be. It gives people the opportunity to sort of think outside the box, if you like, and work hard, and not only that, but just think differently and find ways and be creative. And I think sometimes we lack that sort of creativity in thought and in even moving and changing, or I don't know what it is. But I certainly just don't try and put in excuses, and it's easy to make excuses. It's easy to say, well, it wasn't me, or it wasn't partly my fault. It was because of this, because of that. There's a million to one reasons to why we didn't have the season we felt we should have had. But certainly the players that stuck it out for the rest of the season put in some time and worked hard, and I think just the fact that we've got another year, we can sort of look forward to that and make sure that next year doesn't happen again, and next year we're not finding ourselves in these situations sort of trying to make excuses, or at least saying we didn't try and we didn't explore every single option that was open to us to explore.
How much of a threat to London Scholars is HEMEL Stags, and how difficult is it competing with what are your Derby and closest rivals? Finishing as the top Southern team within Championship 1, and Rob Thomas has signed there for next year. Is it difficult? Do players look at it and think that HEMEL, is the place to be now rather than Scholars?
Well, I like to first of all congratulate HEMEL for the performance they've had this year, and Troy. I believe they've done well, and they were us last season, and they've managed to capitalise on a few of the players that sort of left this club and have gone to them, and they've recruited well during the off season, and that's what's key. The key is bringing in the personnel in addition to the personnel you retain, and if you do that as a team, no matter where you are, you do well. The teams that do well in Super League are the teams that have 15 to 20 of the squad players that have been there for 2, 3, 4 years. They tend to do well because they've retained a large majority of the squad. They know the systems, they know what's about, they know the club, they know all that aspect of what the club's ambitions are and what the club need to do, and the design, they get that camaraderie as well, and they get that friendship, and in any environment, if you're playing with your friends, if you're working with your friends, it's a lot more productive than if you're working with people that you're not really getting on with, so or new people that you don't really know well, and you've got to get to know them. So it builds that sort of barrier, I guess, when you're recruiting so many players. Then they've got to sort of get to grips with what you need them to do, and it takes some people, it takes them 2-3 weeks to get used to systems, get used to the coach's patterns or strategies. Some players, it might take them 6 months, some players, it might take them a year. You just won't know until those players turn up and they start playing.
With the dual registration that was there this year, Broncos only chose to give your Scholars players on dual reg because they didn't have a massive squad when it got to the start of the year, I guess. Has anything like that been looked at for next year? Obviously, there is still the possibility of dual registration. Are they going to start sending them to HEMEL instead, seeing that as a better option for them, or not?
Well, that's not quite true, because Mike McMakin played at HEMEL, and also I believe my memory's not serving me right here with the winger.
Kieran Dixon went to play at HEMEL as well.
Yes, Kieran Dixon was meant to play at HEMEL because he's a HEMEL lad. So they did have dual reg. At the start, as we all know, London only started pre-season in December, as a Super League club, you kind of need to start earlier than that, so they weren't really sure what they had in terms of players. We sort of happened to have Jamie O'Callaghan went to them, so the start, it wasn't a case of, we had all the dual reg players and HEMEL didn't. Yeah. It was a case of London Broncos not really having a lot of depth in the squad, and later on in the year, once they got the injury, the injured players back, they started getting some regular players, then they distributed the players as best they could. Now, obviously, with the discussion we've had at the time was that we needed players from certain positions. As I said before, that was partly what I was alluding to earlier about making sure that we had players to cover positions, and 1 week we'll have 3 players, and another week we'll have 1 player, and that has a knock-on effect sometime with the squad, and in terms of players getting used to, in terms of players playing week in, week out with the same players, and that's definitely something we're looking to amend this year.
And when you look at next year, I guess there's been a fair bit of pressure on yourself this year to get those results. When you look forward, what are the aims for 2015 to be better, to get into playoffs, to compete? I'm sure you set yourself personal aims as well, to drive yourself forward. How do you see the next 12 months?
The next 12 months. Well, I think for me, what's important is the next 3 months. To be honest, to bring in the players that I'm targeting to bring in the players that I need to bring in, make sure that we're in the strongest positions we can in terms of recruitment, in terms of players, during and before pre-season, and before the season starts. Then once the season starts, it's hard to say that there are 4 good, very strong teams that will be coming down next season, and you would expect a championship team coming back into Championship 1, to be a strong side, and so I believe once again they'll be all eyes will be on them, and we'll be looking up rather than down to see, they'll be the sort of benchmark to where we've got to get to. And hopefully we're there in the mix, and towards the back end of the season, we're sort of back into good form and doing what we've done in the past in 2013, and also doing what HEMEL did this season, being that playoff position.
And I've asked it of a few of the coaches that I've spoken to in the sort of end of season review that I'm doing. Are you still enjoying it? It must have been a tough year, but are you still doing your job with a smile on your face and enjoying being there?
I don't know about a smile in my face. I mean, I can laugh now, and I can just about get my face up in terms of a smile. For me, everything that I do, I enjoy the challenge. The challenge is what I enjoy. I enjoy being challenged. I enjoy having, in a weird way, having to sort of overcome obstacles, and that's what I like. I like to see us improving and being better and being stronger, and that's so I like to chase, and I like to fight and work. So for me, the enjoyment comes out of next season and turning up with a different team, and turning up with a much stronger team, with a more competitive team, and that's what I'm looking forward to, and that's what for me gets me up and gets me excited. Even when we're losing, I would get up and come to training, and I'll be infused, and I'll be talking to players and say, my enthusiastic comes because I know you guys can do better, and I know we can get there. You just have to believe it, and we'll go out there, and and sometimes, we rose to occasions, and most of the time we didn't, and that's what was disappointing. But certainly, what gets me up every morning to come and coach, because I know, and I see a lot of progression in the players, and I would stop coaching or being involved in rugby once I stop seeing the progression of players. And that would be the only thing that would deter me from carrying on. But as long as I see progression, as long as I see strength in play, sometimes progression doesn't always mean result. Progression for me sometimes would mean a player playing a lot better than they have done in the past, or being competent enough to play at this level. For me, that's a strong sign for and hope for the future.
And I should probably ask how your pitch is looking. You're having a 3G picture installed. How is it?
So far, there's just rocks and pebbles on the pitch. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks or so, there'll be a bit of grass on it. But we started pre-season soon, so I'm sure we'll be ready before pre-season.
London Skolars coach Joe Mabou. It's been a while since we had a chat with Joe, so a bit of a longer interview there with the Skolars boss, and had been very honest, wasn't he, in his assessment of the season and sort of how it had gone wrong and the squad depth not being there, and that's why they struggled. And I mean, like I say, I'm sure it was a tough and pressurised year for Joe. He mentions there, plans for next year and going on, and I'm sure he'll look to improve on things for 2015. Not an easy situation, and Joe still learning in the trade, isn't he? Really, and still trying to better himself. Always up for the challenge. Never wants to shy away from that. So good luck to Joe Mabou in his recruitment and assembling his side for the Championship 1 in 2015. I mean, I've said it so many times, but it's going to be such a difficult division next year. And I mean, thinking about it, what would be a good achievement for for one of the southern clubs next year? Can playoffs be achievable with 5 teams coming down? I mean, that would be an astonishing achievement, really, when you consider what's going on in the leagues. But I guess we'll see how things pan out and see who retains and who signs who, and I'm sure it'll be an interesting few months before the rugby league action gets back underway in early 2015. But we will catch up with Joe Mabou, I'm sure, ahead of the season next year. Now then, on to South Wales. 10 points, 4 wins and 2 bonus points for them this season. Like I said before, I had wanted to avoid getting them on at the end of the podcast. I spoke to Mike twice. It'll all be explained in the interview. But here is my chat with Mike Grady of the South Wales Scorpions, with them having a terrific run into the end of the year and plenty to look forward to for 2015 for the South Wales Scorpions and Mike Grady. When you look back on the season then, it was tough, but it did seem like as you got towards the end of the year, things started to all fit into place.
Yeah, we got better as the season went along. Results didn't show that, but performance-wise and individual players, everyone improved. They were learning as we went along, and we ended up not successful, but we improved a lot and we learned a lot of things as the season went along.
Now, if I'm being completely honest with the listeners, we did actually record this interview a couple of days ago, and through a mistake of my own, we haven't recorded it, or haven't got it to put out anyway. I did record it, and then it's a long story. But since then, we can include this now, you have had a couple of your players selected for the Wales squad, and also a couple of nominations for the club at the end of season awards.
Yeah, it's been a busy week of good news, really. We've had 6 lads selected in the Welsh squad for the European nations at the end of the year. Also, Conor Farrell is up for Young Player of the Year at the Championship Awards dinner, and fortunately I've got up for Coach of the Year myself, which is pleasing for the hard work that we've all done. So it's nice to get a bit of recognition at the end of the season. Am
I right in saying that these the awards are, or the nominations in particular, are voted for by sort of your fellow coaches in the league? So it's the people that do see the effort and the work that goes in.
Yeah, that's who it is. It's we all get a vote. We all get our top 3, if you like. We vote for number 1, 2, and 3. And as you say, it's great that my fellow coaches have seen the hard work that's gone in. I speak to a lot of them, obviously, on game day, and they've said how much we have improved, like you mentioned earlier on. They can see the improvement, although it doesn't see in the paper on a Monday morning when people have a look at the score, but they can see the gradual improvement and the hard work that's going in. So it's nice in that sense that it's been chosen by my fellow coaches.
And this is probably an entirely unfair question to ask you, and you'll probably say that you won't answer it, but when you're writing down your top 3, I won't ask you who you wrote down, but when you're thinking about the effort and the achievements that you've done, did you think that you were as good as those 3 you were putting down, better than, were you in there? Did you think, I hope I do get some recognition?
I didn't even think about it, to be honest. Obviously when the season went along, it didn't even cross my mind, and all of a sudden we get asked at the end of the year to do that, and you have a little thinking, it'd be nice if we ended up in the top 3, but I didn't really think I would. We've come bottom of the league at the end of the day, so I didn't think anyone who'd finished bottom of the league would be in with a shout. But as we've touched on, I'm probably the same with my selections.
you look at people that have progressed throughout the year, if you like, and probably achieved a lot within their limits, if you like, within their budget, their playing roster, and within their limits. So yeah, it's nice to get on there, and you never know, the stranger things have happened.
Let's move on to more comfortable topics and get you not talking about yourself. What about your young player as well that's up for an award? Deserving?
Deserving. For me, he's player of the year for me, not just young player of the year. He's a fantastic prospect, and he's still only 19 years of age. He's been selected in the Welsh squad, rightly so, and if you speak to the coaches in Championship 1, they'd probably back me up on how good the kid is. He's an 80-minute hooker. He tackles his heart out, and he can make 40, 50 tackles a game. So it's definitely deserved, and I hope he does get it on the night.
John Keir now coaching Wales. I'm sure he probably had a conversation with you about sort of the players. You obviously got a few lads in that squad. You obviously have to try and sell your squad or sell your players to John in terms of their achievements and how good they are, because he can't get around, he can't see everyone. Are you quite pleased that there's so many in there?
Yeah, I am actually. Yeah, the six that have made the squad that I spoke to John about a couple of times when he did get the job. They were the six that I thought could do a job if selected within the squad. As I explained to John, as a group, it's probably not come together. We've probably lacked a few experienced players, but individually, them lads that have been selected that have played well, they've had a good season, and rightly so. I put them forward for the national side, and fantastic. They've all got in. It's a great achievement for them all.
And we're doing this as an end-of-season review, so we'll look back a little bit in terms of, like we say, it's been a tough year, but when you look at it, the club has come a long way, really, in the last sort of, 8-9 months, and I guess you're only going to be stronger for it for next year in what will be, and I keep saying this to everyone, a much tougher division.
Yeah, well, you're right, it will be a very tough division because there's some established rugby league sides that'll be coming down into the league, so a lot of experience there we'll be playing against. It's been tough 8-9 months. On paper it's been tough, but it's enjoyable at the same time as well. It's probably a bit weird saying that, but I enjoy my job. The players love what they're doing, and there's this culture this year. Everyone enjoys being here, and all the boys are Welsh and they bought into it. So it's been okay this year. The results, as we've all seen, they've not been great, but we've been progressing. The future's looking good. Most of the squad are signed on now, if not all of the squad. Just not been released yet, the details, but everyone's signed on, ready to go, agreed terms, and hopefully we can have one or two more, find a few more Welsh boys in the valleys and go from there.
And if I get this right, and I'm remembering the interviews that I've done over the last few weeks correctly, and the questions that I did ask you when we recorded this for the first time, I'm pretty sure it was Tony Benson of Oxford who said that he likes the way that South Wales go about things and the structures and the systems that you use. Is it nice to have someone else, again, the recognition for what the club's doing?
Yeah, it was good. It was good when I heard that, and I think I've seen it online as well. It's a nice comment, and it's just nice that people can see the hard work and the things that you do, and acknowledge the things you do. So it's fantastic when people say things like that. And to be fair to Tony, he was the first fella that phoned me up when I got the job, wishing me all the best, telling me there would be tough times, but just ride it out, just carry on in what you believe in, and things will be okay. So it's nice to see that. And to be fair to Tony, he's a good bloke, and he did give me a call, and I appreciate his comments that he put.
And you're now having a bit of time with the family, a bit of downtime in the off season. Although to be fair, I don't think anybody takes really an off season from rugby league, especially in a coaching capacity as such. But will you be back at South Wales? We've talked about how difficult it is in your personal circumstances. Are you going to be back there next year?
Yeah, I'll be back. Paul, my assistant Paul Emanuele, who I know you spoke to in the past, he'll be starting pre-season for me around November, December time, and then he'll do a month or two, and I'll come down in January, I think that it's looking like. So Paul's steering the ship at the moment down south, so if he spoke to him, he's probably pulling his hair out because he's doing everything, and I'm up here remotely over the phone. But he's a good bloke, and again, Paul's one of these that have been recognised in the Wales squad, so made up for Paul. He's had a fantastic year as well. But yeah, allegedly it's a bit of downtime, but there's still a bit to do.
Still enjoying it?
Yeah, I love it. I love it no matter what level I'd be involved with, or I'd still be involved somewhere. It's a fantastic sport. I love what I'm doing, and well, I won't say this, but if he said do it for free, I'd do it. But I do enjoy the sport, and it's fantastic, especially in South Wales. There's something about it in South Wales. There's a love for rugby league, and
I think you touched on it in the last interview we had. There's a real passion, and people are doing it for nothing and giving up their own time, and they really want to be involved in it. So I do love it, I do enjoy it, and I can't wait to get going next year.
Great to talk to Mike Grady, and as we mentioned, for the second time. And yeah, I mean, I think in the first interview, I asked him the question as for, I mentioned when I go along to Broncos and I talk about, I'll go there, and the atmosphere, it's always positive, and it's always London against the rest of the world. You know, there's a real sort of bond of people who are fighting for the cause, and sometimes, as we mentioned on the programme, people don't buy into that. People can't feel it unless they're actually at the club. If you're visiting, if you're a visiting player or a visiting coach, you don't get that understanding of what the closeness and the close-knit element that you get at the Broncos. And I asked Mike what the general feeling was. You know, if I was to go to South Wales Scorpions, what would be the general feeling that I would have? That when I left, that would be my overriding impression. And he said it's the same thing. You know, it's a togetherness and a bond which I don't know. I mean, is it unique to get teams in the South? I don't think it is, because you have these bonds and you have the togetherness of other squads elsewhere. But I think being slightly separated, being away from where the game's main body is, just gives you that different element and that added element to what you might have somewhere else. And there we go then. We got to the end of this latest Rugby League Down South podcast. Like I said before, apologies once again for the delay in getting it to you and false promises of publishing at various times. It's been a rather busy period, but hopefully things are settling down now. Plenty new things on the horizon for me, but one of the things that will be staying there is the Rugby League Down South podcast. Thank you once again for all your downloads and your listens and your support of the programme next year. I hope that we can continue to make it bigger and better, and there's still the potential of doing something on the Championship as well, with London Broncos now down in Championship and not the Super League. So we'll see what happens in terms of my diary for 2015, and we'll see what we can do in terms of audio podcast for next year. But like I say, thank you for your support this year. There will be more, don't worry. I'm not going away, I'm not going anywhere. We'll hopefully have something in the next couple of weeks, and yes, you will hear of it all on Twitter, I'm sure, or you can just subscribe to the feeds and you will receive it as and when. So thank you once again, and I'll be back soon with another Rugby League Down South.